Hi, I'm John Nerrell, and welcome to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your career and overwhelmed by what steps to take, I can help you. As an executive and career transition coach, I help my clients prepare, position, and promote who they are and what they do to show up and find a job they love or love the job they have. It's time to start building your mid-career GPS. So let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome. This is the first episode of the Mid-Career GPS podcast. And what we're going to talk about today is defining what is your mid-career moment. Now, if you've had one of these, you know it's pretty powerful. If you haven't, brace yourself because it's coming. I'm so excited to bring you this podcast. This is the second podcast that I have launched. The first one I did was called Show Up 2020. And the purpose of that podcast was to talk to everyday people who are doing extraordinary things because of how they're showing up in their career. You can find that podcast wherever you listen, but I'm so grateful for that podcast because I had an opportunity to talk to people who pivoted during the pandemic. They found their dream job. Or I talked to healthcare professionals who were battling on the front lines during the pandemic. Frontline workers, teachers, educational leaders, and people who had just fascinating stories that I wanted to give them a platform to share what it has meant for them to show up through a lens of my Show Up 6 strategies that I talk about in my book. But the end of last year in 2020, like many of us, that caused us time to reflect and consider what we wanted out of 2021. For me, it was a chance to pivot the podcast and to launch this Mid-Career GPS podcast to help you navigate this really fascinating and interesting time in your career, to have a level of support in what you are deciding to do next for your career. Now, when I talk about next, I don't necessarily mean quitting your job and going somewhere else, while that can certainly be a part of it. Part of navigating mid-career is to either help you find the job that you'll love or love the job that you have. And the reason we get to determine that is because of having a mid-career moment. Now, it's not a midlife crisis. Let's get that out of the way, okay? It's something completely different. But for the purposes of our conversation, we have to define what mid-career is. And let's acknowledge that mid-career is also pretty vague. So the Office of Personnel Management within the federal government defines mid-career as someone who has 10 or more years of work experience. If we think of our careers in 3 stages, there's early, middle, and late. Fair enough to say that early career, right after you graduate, be it either high school or college, and started working, you're very eager to just get in, make money, do really good work, build the groundwork for your career as you start to level up and move forward. And in later career, you're eyeing retirement. You're eyeing retirement within that 5 to 10 year window. But what we have seen because of the pandemic and even over the last few years is that people are working later. People are working well into their 60s and sometimes even early 70s, that when we start thinking about where does mid-career specifically fall, it does encompass a pretty wide age range. So where are you? You may be somebody who is in their early 30s, but have those 10 years experience and really see yourself as a mid-career professional. Maybe you have that title of manager, senior manager, maybe even director. And you're recognizing that you're at this point in your career where you are ready to lay some roots into the ground, if you will, and really establish where you are at in your career. You may be someone in their late 30s to early 40s, or even late 40s to early 50s. This podcast is going to help feed you wherever you are to give you that information you need. But while mid career defines a certain aspect of where you're at in your career, we have to acknowledge that mid career also reflects certain things in your life. You may be married or in a committed relationship. You may have children. And if you have children, it's certainly fair to say that 2020 was a difficult year between trying to juggle virtual learning and homeschooling with all the pressures and demands of your job as well. As a mid career professional, you may have aging parents. You may have seen a shift in your caregiver role where you are now the primary caregiver for your parents to ensure that their later years are well taken care of. And as a mid career professional, you worry. You worry about all of the responsibilities that you have and doing a really, really good job, both personally and professionally. The people I work with, the people whom I talk to on a day-to-day basis are heart-centered professionals and leaders who tend to put everybody else first before they put themselves first. Does that define you in some way? Are you giving me like the head nod as you're listening to this or you're in your car driving? So, what makes a mid-career moment? For me, it goes back to a very definitive day as a middle school mathematics teacher when I was standing up in front of my class teaching a lesson on multiplying fractions. I spent 14 years teaching in a wonderful district in northern New Jersey. And I loved the people I was working with. I loved the job I was doing. And I had tenure, and I could certainly have stayed there for the rest of my career and been fine. But I was teaching this class, and we were getting ready to talk about multiplying fractions. Now, if you remember back to your school days and you remember back to learning about how to operate with fractions, it's not the most exciting lesson in the world. And as a teacher, it was my job to make it interesting and relevant and engaging and get the kids to learn what it was that we were doing in terms of multiplying with fractions. And as I started the lesson, I heard this voice inside of my head. And if you can imagine, I'm there and I'm talking to my students and I'm sharing this information, and the voice inside of my head is going, "You cannot do this the rest of your life, John. How in the hell are you going to do this for the rest of your career?" And if you can think about doing one thing and listening to that voice in your head, and I'm going, yeah, but this is what I'm doing. And the voice was there, and it was there for a reason, because for me in this mid-career moment, everything changed after that. I kept hearing that voice in my head saying, you need to do something more. There's a lot more for you to do. And again, while I loved where I worked and I loved the people I was working with and I had great students, I was called to do something more. And for me, that was about shifting my focus to go from teaching students to working with teachers, helping them be better teachers. And the kind of role that I wanted to do didn't exist where I was working. And so it started this 3-year exploration of getting really clear about what I wanted to do and where I wanted to do it and who I wanted to help and what were the values that I needed to have met in this job that was going to give me the kind of fulfillment and satisfaction and motivation that I wanted to out of the work that I was doing, because what I was doing was fine, but I wanted something more. Your mid-career moment is about you saying to yourself that you want something more and you are not willing to settle because you fear that in settling, you're going to get stuck. And in getting stuck, you see a path in front of you that is too long and too laborious. And yet you may also have these golden handcuffs where you're making really good money and it's taking care of all the bills and the responsibilities you have. And you don't want to give that up either. But when you know you want something more and you are ready to hear that voice in your head for what it is and what it is saying, then it's your mid-career moment to really explore what those possibilities are. In my book, Show Up: 6 Strategies for Leading a More Energetic and Impactful Career, one of the Show Up 6 strategies is about welcoming new opportunities. How open are you to really welcome a new opportunity that may present itself to you that you want to do? So if you've had that kind of mid-career moment, embrace it. It's just part of your career arc. Everybody has it. You're normal. This is what happens when you care about what you do and where you want to do it and the impact you want to make. We've learned so much in 2020. I have said over and over and over again that it has been an epic year. And in hearing that and knowing that, the question becomes, what's your goal for 2021? Look, I'm not a big person who makes New Year's resolutions and sets goals and things like that, because for me, they don't work. They haven't worked. They tend to lead to a lot of disappointment and then me beating myself up for not following through on my goal. Look, there's still ice cream in my future, even though I probably shouldn't have as much of it as I did in 2020. That's the thing. Setting an intention may serve you a lot differently. One of the things we're going to talk about on this podcast are the things that are going to serve you to help you get where you want to be. But in 2020, we saw record numbers of unemployment. We saw industries decimated because of the pandemic that are going to take years for them to recover. And as I'm recording this in January of 2021, we just got a report that in the last week of December, 787,000 Americans filed jobless claims for the first time. You may be one of those people who, because of the pandemic, were laid off, were furloughed, or were terminated from your position. And if that happened to you, I am sorry. But you have a moment in front of you right now to figure out exactly what is next. That is part of career transition. That is part of what you are doing to professionally develop yourself. And this podcast can be one of those things to help you. So what's your goal for 2021? Or rather, what's your intention, right? Is it about finding a new job? Is it getting back to work? Is it leveling up? Is it walking into your boss's office and asking them for a raise, for a promotion, for more responsibilities? What are you willing to put out there for the ask because you have had this mid-career defining moment? Everyone that I work with that I talk to on a daily basis, they're heart-centered individuals. And while it's great that you come from a place of taking care of others and serving others before you, it can also be pretty draining and exhausting. In mid-career, really throughout all of our lives, but in mid-career, we have to monitor our energetic tank. How much capacity do we have to really give to others while we're taking care of ourselves? Your mid-career moment is an opportunity for you to put yourself first while still being able to take care of everyone and everything. That mid-career moment for you is an opportunity to own where you are, to take a very strategic look at your skills and your talents, identify where you want to stretch and grow, and make a plan for it. That's where your mid-career GPS is there to help you. And that's what it can do for you. When we bring up whatever app it is that we have in our phones and we plug it in, it takes us to our destination in the easiest and simplest path possible. But sometimes accidents happen. There are detours, there are roadblocks, and the GPS navigates us around them to avoid the stress and the traffic to get where we want to go. GPSs are not always linear. Sometimes they take us around a few turns, and so do our careers. So as you think about building this GPS for yourself, I want you to identify one professional intention you have for yourself this year. Maybe it's finding that new job, or getting the raise, or getting the internal promotion, creating greater work-life balance, taking leadership on a new project, managing people for the first time, or managing people a little bit differently than you've ever done. You get to decide. You get to input what you want into your GPS to figure out how that's going to help you get to where you want to go. And here's the thing. Maybe you don't have an end in mind. Maybe you're unsure if you want the big title, or you want to go work for one of the Fortune 100 companies. You may not know what the end goal is, and I'm here to tell you that is okay. You do not need to have a final destination in mind and get all of this figured out. You just need to figure out the next step. So what's the intention? That's what your next step is. That's what's going to help you get to where you want to go. And I'm here to help you with that. All right. So in summary, today what we talked about was knowing that mid-career can be defined by age, experience, but also by mindset. How do you view yourself professionally in the workplace? And have you had that mid-career moment? Can you define for yourself specifically what was that moment when you recognized you were called to do something more and you were not willing to settle? And lastly, what's your intention? What do you want to do about it? That is the challenge in front of you. And I'm excited to help you build that through this podcast. But I also have some other resources for you as well. If you're on Facebook, I've got a Facebook group called Your Mid-Career GPS. It's really easy to find. And I invite you to join the group. Join a group of talented and amazing mid-career professionals who are coming together to support each other in helping you navigate exactly where you're at in mid-career. It's a fantastic group. I hope you join it. Would love to see you in there. I also go live in the group every now and then as well. So you're definitely get some more content and information there in the group. And then for the month of January on Amazon, my books show up 6 strategies to lead a more energetic and impactful career. The Kindle version is down to $1.99 for the month of January. Certainly hope you will check that out as well. So let's get started building that mid-career GPS. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And remember, how we show up matters. And that's a big part in building your GPS. And we'll talk more about that as well. Take care. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you usually listen. If you haven't already, I'd appreciate it if you would leave me a rating and review to let me know what you think, to help others find this podcast and continue to bring you relevant and useful content to help you navigate what's next for your career. And if you're ready to create your mid-career GPS and get rid of the overwhelm so you can find the job you'll love or love the job you have, visit my website at johnneral.com for more information about joining my private Facebook group and scheduling a free consult with me so we can start building your mid-career GPS together. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Neral Coaching. I'll see you next time.